And anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter. So I'm happy to be here at the Easter egg roll with my dad and my kids, because, you know, this is what we're doing it for. These kids right here.
We have seen the erasure of past accomplishments, but what we are seeing now is the elimination of future opportunities. Hey, shout out to all of our subscribers and members here on the channel. My name is Reese Waters, and I'm troubled. Now, I just recorded a video where I talk about the erasure of the accomplishments of both minorities and women in the United States military.
More fallout over DEI after the Air Force removed training courses with videos of the Tuskegee Airmen, the nation's first black military pilots who served in the segregated World War II unit, and the women Air Force service pilots, the female World War II pilots, who were vital in ferrying warplanes for the military. The removal comes in response to the Trump administration's crackdown on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. In a statement, the nonprofit created to talk about this and preserve the legacy of the Tuskegee Airmen condemned the move, writing in part, quote, "We call upon the President and the Secretary of Defense to immediately rescind this action and provide clear guidance to all government agencies."
Now, I'll be honest, I almost made this a racist of the week, because that is exactly what we're talking about. Pure, unadulterated, uncut racism and sexism for that matter. But I like to have a lot of fun over there in that space. There is one thing that I don't play about, and that is people who have served. And I would like to couple that with a piece I did a few weeks ago where I looked at the military backing out of recruiting at the Black Engineer of the Year event. And by the way, they didn't just back out of recruiting the Black Engineer of the Year. They also eliminated a number of affinity clubs where groups with a shared background could get together and share experience, strength, and hope. There's things like this memo from constituents abroad on a U.S. military base who are parents in the DoD school system outraged that censorship is happening against military families. This came from Jamie Raskin. One asked a school official why they removed photos on the walls of Susan B. Anthony and Dr. King, but not Leonardo da Vinci, and was told, quote, he was a real historical figure. The kind of treatment that had one black general saying, bleeping racist about Trump's attack on the military. Now, one of the things I mentioned in part one, we were talking about Jackie Robinson and his article being stricken, but then reinstated after widespread uproar. And they said, oh, it was a mistake. And apparently that was a mistake, but the exact same justification being used to remove these other articles, not a mistake. One of the things I said in part one was we know that the private sector seems to fall in line when it comes to these kind of governmental mandates. We've seen that with DEI already. And no sooner than I finish that recording, I see, don't be shocked if Major League Baseball strikes out Jackie Robinson Day with DEI fastball. Jackie Robinson Day, it's going, almost gone. And since Major League Baseball officials are sprinting in that direction faster than Ricky Henderson, oops, it's too DEI to mention baseball's all-time leader in stolen bases, who happened to be African-American. So let's say the generic guy on the MLB logo. Why would those baseball officials stop there? After 28 years, they might as well unretire Robinson's number 42 for their 30 teams, just to make sure the U.S. government doesn't unleash its considerable wrath on their industry that they said made a record $12.1 billion last season, up from $11.6 billion in 2023. President Donald Trump's new administration isn't into diversity. There's even a moment earlier this week when the Department of Defense ripped a page from its website on Robinson's biographical information involving his Army service during World War II. Robinson was Rosa Parks 11 years before Rosa Parks. Now that is a fascinating take and one that I wholeheartedly back, because what is the justification for eliminating DEI, this widespread purge of DEI that we've seen across the private sector, this widespread purge of DEI we've seen across the websites of our U.S. military, but preserving things like Jackie Robinson Day. See, that is the exact same justification that he used in trying to strike down Black History Month and Women's History Month, for that matter. Remember all that conversation that happened in January, and then there was widespread uproar, and it went by the wayside, and he still got him to awkwardly electric slide. He still got the Black MAGAs to awkwardly electric slide around Kodak Black down there in February. Yeah. He floated this idea already, but because of the response, he fell back. So you got to ask about things like this, not only in the short term, but also in the long term, because if we're going to go along with all of the rest of it, then where do these outliers fall? Army public affairs officials who shepherd the service's media and coordinate communications with journalists have been directed to take down online content that includes race, gender, and affirmative action, as well as observances of Black History Month and Women's History Month, according to an internal memo reviewed by military.com. The danger here is the stuff has never been defined. One senior Pentagon public affairs official told military.com, "It's going to get us thinking about race and gender in ways that are problematic, and it's inevitably going to lead to exclusion." Oh, I think that's the point. The directive tasks officials with combing through past communications using a list of 59 flag keywords. Among those words are culture, racism, justice, dignity, diversity, sexuality, and tolerance. One of the most striking inclusions is respect, a word that is one of the Army's own 7 core values. And just so I'm clear, you are willing to include the word respect in your flag keywords, one of your 7 core values, because it could be associated with women and minorities. And God forbid you do that. The People First Initiative was an effort by top officials to focus on the health and welfare of soldiers, which should include the quality of barracks and food, access to physical fitness resources, and positive professional relationships with superiors. The idea was that if the individual soldier was taken care of, they'd be better fit to fight in war. The slogan's namesake came from the People First Task Force, a group created to address the findings of the Fort Hood Report, a significant independent investigation into the conduct of leaders at the base, since renamed Fort Cavazos, and the handling of sexual violence cases after the of Special Private Vanessa Guillen. The report led to the firing of 14 Army officials. I guess I'll just stop taking photos of and sharing the stories of women and Black soldiers, another public affairs official told military.com. Not sure how else to interpret this. Oh no, that is exactly how you should interpret this. And in fact, that's probably how it's intended for you to interpret this. And remember when I mentioned the Black Engineer of the Year and how they fell back from recruiting at that particular event? Check out the bottom of this article. Earlier this month, all the services abandoned a significant annual recruiting event at the Black Engineer of the Year Awards, a prestigious Black engineering conference in Baltimore, Maryland. The Army also ceased its relationship with Ashley Hall, an all-girl prep school where it used to do annual outreach events. Now, here's where we project forward. Here's where we see where this is going, because we have seen the erasure of past accomplishments, but what we are seeing now is the elimination of future opportunities. And because this train is never late, Marine Corps tightens rules on shaving waivers for medical conditions. The U.S. Marine Corps has ordered Marines diagnosed with pseudofolliculitis barbae, an inflammatory skin condition aggravated by shaving, to undergo medical reevaluation within 90 days to determine if they still require a shaving waiver, according to new Marine Corps guidance issued Thursday. The administrative message outlines a phased treatment plan for Marines affected by pseudofolliculitis barbae, with the ultimate goal of returning service members to grooming standards and ensuring maximum warfighting readiness. Ensuring the health, resilience, and discipline of our Marines and sailors is essential to sustaining our warfighting capability and maintaining the high standards required to remain ready for any challenge. These standards ensure we remain the world's premier fighting force, ready to fight and win with unwavering readiness, discipline, and lethality. Also known as razor bumps, the condition disproportionately affects black men. And yes, you heard me right. They use the phrase warfighting readiness and lethality in talking about razor bumps. Apparently, that was affecting the warfighting readiness. Right. This mandate comes from a man in Pete Hegseth who, in slamming DEI, talked about how it's affecting their recruiting, how they can't reach their recruiting goals because of the DEI. But now what we're doing is finding ways to disqualify disproportionately black soldiers for razor bumps. They are nothing if not sloppy. None of this stands up to any level of receipts. And by the way, this also comes, since I mentioned Pete Hegseth, this is coming from a man who was widely considered grossly unqualified for that job.
Secretary Hegseth must resign. He texted secret war plans to a journalist, and when confronted about that, he lied to American people and said it was a hoax when the White House had already authenticated the text messages. And now we have this story about Pete Hegseth's wife. I think reporters need to ask, what exactly was discussed at this meeting? Was it highly sensitive, and did she have a security clearance? What was her purpose of being at the meeting?
And anonymous smears from disgruntled former employees on old news doesn't matter. So I'm happy to be here at the Easter egg roll with my dad and my kids, because this is what we're doing it for. These kids right here. This is why we're fighting the fake news media. This is why we're fighting slash and burn Democrats. This is why we're fighting hoaxsters. This group, no, this group right here, full of hoaxsters that peddle anonymous sources from leakers with axes to grind, and then you put it all together as if it's some news story. And when we know it, we know exactly what it is. So I'm really proud of what we're doing for the president, fighting hard across the board, and I'm going to go roll some Easter eggs.
Thanks so much for joining us on this Easter Sunday. I'm Lindsay Davis. We begin tonight with breaking news just coming in. Sources say Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth is said to have shared sensitive details about the strike in Yemen targeting Houthis in a second Signal group chat on March 15th that included his wife and brother, among others.
And get along to go along. And, start doing Meet the Press and going to the Council on Foreign Relations and spending time with all the new cocktail sipping crowd. That's not why I'm here.
This comes from an administration with a gentleman in Darren Beatty who worked at the State Department that said competent white men must be in charge. He kept his gig, and you tell me where his mandate has been violated in any way by the moves of your administration. And it certainly didn't discourage you from moving forward. Now did it? Now some of you guys might be thinking, well, that kind of discrimination is illegal. You can't have segregation in America in 2025. Trump administration no longer requires ban on segregated facilities in government contracts. The Trump administration is no longer requiring an explicit prohibition of segregated facilities. A February 15 memo from the U.S. General Service Administration was first reported by NPR. Segregation is still illegal in the U.S., and the memo states contractors are still subject to laws on civil rights and non-discrimination. But the directive from the GSA, which manages federal property and sources contracting options for other agencies, came in response to one of President Trump's executive orders aimed at rolling back diversity, equity, and inclusion in the federal government.
A change by the Trump administration is it's having a decades-old ripple effect. The federal government no longer explicitly prohibits contractors from having segregated restaurants, waiting rooms, and drinking fountains.
Yeah, the segregation clause is one of several identified in a public memo issued by the General Services Admission last month, affecting all civil federal agencies. Legal experts say this change to contracts to all across all the federal government is significant.
Now, there is so much to respond to there, but this is where I give a shout out to attorney Khalif Rhodes over at Queen City News. He had one of the best takes on this that I've heard.
All right, we're bringing back in our legal expert, Khalif Rhodes. So let's talk about what is the language here that is in this FAR, the Federal Acquisitions Regulation, that these agencies use when they're writing contracts for their federal contractors. Why is this so symbolic?
Well, let's go back a couple steps if we can. In another lifetime, I worked as a government contracting solicitation company, or I should say bidding company. Did that for a number of years, bid on a lot of things, from toilet paper to defense contracts. And what I can tell you as far as control, they are what you look for when you're looking at participating in a bid. The very first thing you do is you flip to the FAR and see, well, hey, do I meet these requirements? These FARs are extremely important. If you fail to meet one of these, you're not even going to get an opportunity to be considered, let alone win a bid. And so FARs are extremely important. These aren't just recommendations or little sticky notes that they put there. They control the bidding and contracting process. And so this language here, I've read the memorandum that was sent out by the director, and the very first thing says ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunities. So even within that language, there's a lot of dog whistle within here.
Now, I'm going to let him cook because he cooks after this. But I just had to jump in. The dog whistling in the memorandum. Restoring merit-based opportunities with the underlying assumption that we didn't earn it. And this is a directive that is going down with this cabinet.
We've launched a massive testing and research effort that's going to involve hundreds of scientists from around the world. By September, we will know what has caused the autism epidemic, and we'll be able to eliminate those exposures.
I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there is a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's a wonderful thing. Kids are sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it wasn't all that long ago that we're going to have internet in our schools. Woo! Now, okay, let's see A1 and how can that be helpful? How can it be helpful in one-on-one instruction? How can it be helpful in absorbing, more information for those fast learners? It can be more one-on-one directed. And those are the kinds of things and innovations that I want to see continue to develop.
That is how they refer to us, all of us, regardless of qualifications and positions. We've seen that. Without the red hat, that's what's coming at all of you. Restoring merit-based opportunities, while he tries to place his family members in high branches of the government. Merit-based.
If you look at some of the things that they removed, talking about removing the equal opportunity, I mean, I can agree that a number of the things that are listed in these FARs are duplicative. And that's what he mentions in here, that it's duplicative. Why? Because it's protected by the Civil Rights Act 1964. So because you have that in there, yes, the protections, that safeguard, that safety net, even if someone didn't have these FARs, it would still be that protection there. But the duplicative portion, these FARs will go deeper than that. This is saying I can't discriminate. This is in the Civil Rights Act, saying I can't discriminate on you based on race, on gender, on these protected classes. But this is telling you exactly how you cannot discriminate against those people. It's going a step further than that. It's saying, okay, if the Civil Rights Act of 64 is the baseline, This is giving a heightened level of protection to ensure that these contractors know exactly what discrimination looks like and how you cannot and should not discriminate against these certain folks. So while I agree it's duplicative in its base, it adds that extra layer of protection to ensure that discrimination would not continue to happen, specifically in these places where government contracting had a rampant run of discrimination, or you wouldn't have had them there.
So you kind of play both sides right there, saying that there are protections that are still in place even when you've removed this there. But what people are talking about is a precedent that this could set and what could come next. That's what people are worried about.
Well, I think the president has already tipped his hand to exactly what's the attempt to do. I mean, the attack on anything that's DEI, the erasure and removal of any of that that's touching any government infrastructure. I mean, you had the thing with Jackie Robinson that was taken down recently. You had anywhere where there's a mention of the diversity, equity, or inclusion, that's being all scrubbed from any government facilities. The government, or I should say the president and his administration, is attempting to even get in the private sector, give increases and bonuses in those places for companies that remove that from their practices. And so I think the next step is to do this push for any type of discrimination, or I should say anti-discrimination efforts, is to remove it. And this is just one step. And this is not something new. He talked about it when he campaigned. He talked about it on his first day in inauguration. And every executive order that he's done so far has been in efforts of furthering that. And so what's next is the continuation of removing anything that's connected to this diversity, equity, and inclusion piece.
Now, that was an absolute master class from Attorney Rhodes. One thing that we know from our experience, not only with this president, from our experience with MAGA, and from our experiences with America, is it's not about necessarily where we are. It's about where we're going. It's about where we're going. So you hit me with the erasure of our accomplishments in the military. We're all DEI, and you've seen a litany of folks that have been removed and replaced. What did they replace the Joint Chiefs with? A 3-star general who was at home watching OAN? Yeah. We've seen that. We have seen now the fallback in recruiting. We've seen now them floating ways that they can start to disqualify black soldiers. And now we're floating out this segregation piece. It's about where we're going. And that part is actually not just for us. That part is for everybody. And it should be terrifying. And thank you for this, Professor Sturmer.
Hey folks, I don't know why I was thinking about authoritarianism in public history today. I don't know why. But it occurred to me that when history is distorted, when an honest, critical look at our past and the tools that go into that critical evaluation of all of our past, honestly and intersectionally, when all of that is erased, when all of that is diminished, when there's a chilling effect that keeps people from practicing it, it's not just a tragedy, it's a tactic. And it's a tactic used in the toolkit of fascism. In his deeply important book, Erasing History, Jason Stanley, even though he teaches at Yale, I'm not holding that against anybody, argues that democracy relies on a shared understanding of what has happened, how we got from then to now, and how we relate to one another. That provides us a common truth, the same page that guides us in deciding what should happen next. But authoritarians, as Stanley argues, they target that shared memory. They target that engaged and engaging conversation to sever our connection to a meaningful, usable past. In authoritarian countries, critical examination of those nations' history and traditions is subject to, like I said before, it's a chilling effect through threat and intimidation, whether that's online or whether that's on site, and presents, and here's a kicker for public historians, an outright danger to those who do that. And Stanley was reported as saying in this morning in The Guardian, there couldn't be a more obvious example of a fascist social and political movement about to take power than in this country right now. They want us divided, confused, resentful, because in that chaos, they can step in as the sole solution, and you don't have anything to check it against. When you're unmoored, you're easier to manipulate. But mythical narratives, absent any challenge or context, about flawless white heroes can inform fictive modern political identities that quickly turn into political action that help no one but people in power. But here is actually the important thing that occurred to me. When they claim to be nonpartisan, when they claim to be neutral, when they claim to be staying out of it, that is anything but neutrality. That is anything but nonpartisan. That in itself is a political choice because it enables authoritarianism. It clears the way for fascism by erasing history, by muting the truth, by leaving us vulnerable, by eliminating our ability to question and critique that same past and see in fact how it relates to our present. So as public historians, ask yourself, especially when you're going into the voting booth, which side are you on and what does your resistance look like? Are you content with obedience in advance and those who project it? Are you ready to fight for a truthful history that keeps us informed, connected, and strong in our democracy? Authoritarians want to erase history, and they want to erase your ability to honestly and authentically engage with it. Don't let them. Be vigilant, be engaged, challenge institutions and individuals that distort the past or want to distract you from an honest approach to it. Look at the cute cat. Look at our Pfeiffer talking about the birthday of the Navy. Check out the Bray School. Never let them distract you from an honest approach to that past and how we engage with it in the present. And never stop resisting the lure of comfort over truth. Public history, done right, should be anything but comfortable because American history is anything but pleasant. Anything but comfortable. And keep in mind, there are more rogues than just Rogue One.
And that is one thing that we know. You paint over the discomfort. You paint over the unpleasantness. You paint over the atrocities. And pretty soon, people forget the lessons that we were supposed to learn from the past. And they become the future. And we're already seeing the footprints. And that is why I'm troubled. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. And I want to thank you for all your incredible suggestions for guests.
Bruh, man, can I get my seat, man?
Don't tell. I shouldn't have said here, right?
That could join me on my weekly 8 p.m. live. Now you'll see some of your favorite creators, not only on this platform, but other social media platforms joining me every Tuesday at 8 p.m. So be on the lookout for that. Now, a lot of you guys have already signed up for my newsletter, but we're going to create a written version of the Reese Waters channel and put our stamp on it and allow us to cover some topics we can't always cover in the videos, or maybe some odds and ends that we couldn't get into the videos. It's almost like when you're in the shower and you remember that perfect line that really would have set that argument off. You know, what you really wanted to say to that ex or coworker.
I don't want to bore you any. You know I love you, I love you, I love you.
No, for real. You can sing with me without touching me.
Come on.
You wasting your time by singing to me because I'm not listening.
All the stuff that I forgot and just missed that didn't necessarily make the videos, you can find that in the newsletter. You can sign up for that at ReeseWaters.com. There, you might also see a bunch of new merch. That's right, I teased it. It is finally here. We have new merch on the website and we'll be continuing to drop new merch. So make sure you check that out at the website. And speaking of merch, I first want to give a shout out to all the fantastic mods, the mod squad here on the channel that does a fantastic job every single day. But one of our originals, my man Dank, sent me this pic with his I'm Troubled t-shirt, and he looks so good in it. I almost went and ordered another one for myself, but then I realized that, you know, I need to get my front porch fixed. Yeah, it's not gonna look that way on me. No, just the O and the B just be it'd be look like it's a bow shirt. But in the meantime, I want to thank you guys for being such an incredible community and one that gives me so much hope when I wake up every single day.